So this is Joshua Lee again, and I'm going to do a tutorial real quick to just show you why your Sportsman 400 may not be firing. So I have one right here. This is a Sportsman 400. You can see I have a complete mess here with disassembly and just about to pull my hair out trying to figure out why it's not firing. And I failed to follow one of my own steps in diagnosis. So this is like a 2005, and this technique applies to pretty much all the Sportsman 400s with a carburetor on them. It does not apply to the ones that are EFI. So you can see carburetor. It'll say EFI on it, typically if it's an EFI model, but most of those that are like, this is like a 2004, 2003, so if it's an EFI. And so if you want to determine whether it's firing, the easiest way is see the spark plug. Just pull the spark plug boot off. You don't really even have to take the spark plug out. You can just use another spark plug, just kind of hang it on the side of the motor and make sure the thread casing here is touching the engine, and that's just a ground. And then you can just turn it on and then just see if it's firing. Yeah, it's kind of hard to see it here, but you saw how it was firing. It's not touching real well here. Let me get it a little better. You want to make sure it's making a really good connection. Let's see if we can get it here. Anyway, you saw it firing there. It's kind of hard to see. So anyway, if it's not firing, if you notice yours is not firing, I'll give you some things to look for, and I'm going to give these to you in reverse. I'm going to show you right now. It's probably not the thing that's wrong, but I'm going to start here first, and then I'm going to work my way back to the thing that most likely is wrong. So Polaris is not firing. You have to come in on the right hand side. You see this case in here? It has, you can either use a 5/16 or I think an 8mm to take these off. This, I don't even know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's like 9 or 10 or so of those screws all around. You have to take all those off, and you have to remove this cover. Obviously, you're going to have to remove this footrest, this fender area, and then after that, you can access it. You do not have to remove these rods. It will literally maneuver around that. You may have to take this pedal and just push it down a little bit, but take that cover off, and what you're trying to access behind that cover is this here. This is an all-in-one unit. So this right here is like the alternator right here, and then it has an igniter as well. And this is an all-in-one unit. It has a long wiring harness on it that goes all the way up. This module here is mounted in there. Here's the wire you can see here, and it goes all the way up to the front. So chances are this little igniter can go bad. I've seen a lot of these cracked, broken, whatever. So that's a very common thing I see. This part here, I forget the cost of it, but it's pretty expensive. It's like, I think it was almost $400 through Polaris, but you can get online and you can order it from a place called Caltrick, and it's probably Chinese aftermarket or whatever, but you can get this part for about $50, maybe $80. So somewhere it should be under $100. You don't have to pay $400, and I highly recommend just getting the aftermarket one. The OEM one is not worth buying. I highly recommend OEM parts most of the time, but in this case here, just get the aftermarket one, put it in there. It's really good. It works well. I've put a lot of them in. So anyway, let me just show you those connections. Putting that module, putting that alternator coil in is not easy at all. You literally have to take this front rack off, pull the bumper forward, and then the wires run up under here. You have to literally take the fender. You can see this fender is just flopping. They just did a horrible job with routing this. So this fender is going to have to come up. And anyway, here's the wires. It has a connector here, a connector there, and then there's a yellow and red wire that makes a connection there. And then in this case here, I also went on and replaced, I think, CDI module right here up in the front. I went on and replaced that too, just because, you know, you don't want to put all that in there and then this is shorted out and then it causes a problem down there. So I just replaced all of it at the same time. Again, you can get this aftermarket. It's a fairly cheap part as well. So I've shown you all of that. Let me show you why you probably don't have to do all that. This is the most common reason why Polarises do not fire. So if you look up in the front, let me show you where I am. This is the very front of the four-wheeler. Take the front rest off, this little platform rest. It looks like this is what I took off here. You take that off, take that cover off this here. You come in right here and you'll see the ignition coil. I'm going to tell you guys, this coil is never bad. I've worked on these things for 20 years or so. I don't think I've ever replaced one of those coils. I don't think I've ever replaced one. They don't go bad. So don't go out and buy that. It's not bad. I promise you it's not bad. Unless you actually see maybe a rat chewed on it, it got too hot, something burned it. If you see visible damage, yeah, go ahead on and replace it. But 99 times out of 100, that thing is not bad. I honestly just don't think I've ever seen one that was bad. But what does happen is you can see there's a conglomeration of wires right here. My camera work is really not great, but you can see there's a bunch of brown wires that go on to the top, and then down here at the bottom there's wires that come in on the bottom. If it's not firing, or sometimes it may just fire once and don't fire anymore. It just fires once, don't fire anymore. If you're having a firing issue, chances are this is not being grounded correctly. And I'll show you what I did. These wires, these brown wires you see, if I can get the camera to depict this, these wires were on this side of this stud, and I just put them over on that side. It's a grounding issue. They're just simply not getting grounded. You may have to take this all the way off, get some sandpaper, sand it back down, put it back. But one way or another, there's a grounding fault. This grounding fault can also cause other problems, like it may cause it where it don't even start. You hit the button and it just don't do anything. Polaris has serious grounding issues in a lot of areas, and they ground a lot of things right here, and you need to really check those grounds. I would highly recommend checking them. And you may say, well, it's touching. This ground can be notorious. Sometimes you can even clean it, put it back, and it still don't be grounding. And so you just have to really, sometimes I have had to run a whole separate wire from here straight to the engine just to get it to ground. I don't know why they're so notorious for that. Well, I think I know why they were notorious for grounding. Let me show you something else. So on a Polaris, the engine is mounted with shock mounts. I don't think I can get them in here, but it's up in here. There's some shock mounts. And so this engine is isolated. Here we go. We got one. If we can get in here, there's a shock mount right here. These shock mounts insulate the motor from the frame, and so it's really for the motor not to really have good grounding. So a lot of the electrical problems on a Polaris all have something to do with poor grounding. So just check your grounding. Again, I showed you is not wrong. This thing here, it goes. I've replaced a lot of these, so these do go wrong quite frequently. But before you pull all that out, come up here in the front and check your ground. Check your ground, and I would take these wires off, swap sides with them, put it on this side, put it on that side, put it here, wherever you can. But just these grounds are notorious, and so that's probably why it's not firing. Again, it's almost never that ignition coil. This goes back. I would say if it's not firing, I'm going to go on and say that this right here is bad. I'm going to say 50% of the times it's that thing. 50% of the times. The other 40% of the chances this could be this here. Particularly if it's not charging the battery too. In this case, this one was not even charging the battery, so I just went on and changed the whole thing out. So if it's not charging the battery, this thing tends to go bad as a unit. So yeah, you may have to replace that. And then the remaining times that if you replace that and you replace your ground, then maybe this is bad. But again, I'm just telling you guys, I made this video, I talked about this principle. There's a lot of things that can go wrong, and then you have things that actually statistically do go wrong. This statistically speaking, this almost never goes wrong. I don't think I've ever had to replace that. Even after working on, I think I've ever had to replace one. I cannot remember. I have replaced it before, but it wasn't even the problem. I replaced it and it still did not work. So, Polaris, when it comes to electrical issues, is just horrible. So, and most of it has to do with grounding. So, hope that helps you guys. Try not to destroy your whole four-wheeler going after one little problem. So I've been on this quite a while. Finally found my problem, and I knew that goes wrong, and I'm not even following my own rules. I knew that these have grounding issues. I'm not even thinking about it. I see that it's not firing and it's not charging the battery, so I go straight after that. And I know you may say, well, how you know it's not charging the battery when it ain't even firing the crank? Actually, it would crank. It would crank for like, I don't know, like 5 seconds or 10 seconds. Sometimes one time I got it to run for about 30 seconds, and then it just shut off. So it was just a really poor ground causing all these issues, and it wasn't charging the battery, and that's how I was able to test it during those 10 seconds. But anyway, let me know. Again, this is just a Sportsman 400. This technique applies to many other Sportsmans as well. As you can see, I have to take quite a bit off just to access things on this. Hope you guys have a great day.